But today we have these really exciting sessions. Joe Justice and Rita McGrath, and the CEO of Hyatt, and Carlota Perez. And they're four very different presentations. And I think what you'll hear is that each one you hear, well, that is amazing. How are we going to top that? And each one you'll find, well, that was very different, but incredible. And so I'm delighted that we start with Joe Justice. Great to see you. Joe and I have been hanging out together in various ways for, I checked, at least 11 years, 12 years. And I first heard about Joe. People told me, there's this amazing guy. He builds a car in a couple of days, at wiki speed. And it was, I didn't believe it. And then he showed me in a presentation how it was done. And he's gone on to do an amazing array of things. He invented extreme management, sort of an equivalent of extreme programming. He's gone on to many, many ways of being agile in new ways, evolving agile as a concept, and doing it particularly in his love of cars. He loves cars, and now he loves space. So it's really it's impossible to summarize an innumerable number of things that you, Joe, have done over these last 11, 12 years that I've known you. And I'm hoping that we can focus the discussion mainly on Tesla and maybe a SpaceX in the background, and that although there's an amazing amount of things that we could talk about, Elon Musk and Twitter and X and a lot of other things, I'm hoping that we can focus it on the Tesla and SpaceX, because the theme of the workshop, as you know, is reinventing management. And what is striking is that you read a 700-page book by Walter Isaacson, just published this month, and it hardly tells you anything about what Joe is going to explain to us. And so Joe actually knows what's going on in Tesla, and Walter Isaacson knows what's going on in Elon's immediate circle, but has from the book anyway, no clue about how Tesla actually functions. And Joe put this amazing podcast, which I think is about 6 or 7 hours, which was just a total, to me, revelation about how this company is reinventing management beyond any company that I've heard about before. And so without further delay, I want to get on to hear from Joe and tell us how this happened, how you happened to be working in Tesla, and your experience of what it was like. And then we'll maybe take some questions and see what it adds up to. So thanks for coming. And we have an exciting audience here, and they're excited to hear from you. And so let's go for it.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much. It's my honor and privilege. I wanted to be there in person, but as some of you may have seen on LinkedIn or my ex, I've been retained by Toyota, and I was just collaborating through the supply chain in Toyota City with Denso and Yamaha. You may have seen that Toyota just unveiled gigacasting and object-oriented modular architecture for their cars in hardware. So the Agile for hardware is now visible. You can see the videos of their prototype gigacasts and 3-piece modular electric vehicles, which is the next-gen architecture. And I'm very happy to say that the most advanced development practice that I've ever seen, hashtag mob AI, is being used in Toyota City. And that's one of the things I'm allowed to say publicly, although, of course, much of what's going on doesn't yet get to be said. But that's why I'm not physically with you. I've been with Toyota here in Toyota City in Japan. I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you, Steve, for a year now. And the top reason why isn't because I'm wonderful friends with you, and isn't because I have phenomenal professional respect for your work and your publications, but it's because of your recent articles on the top 20 the top 20% of companies that are the winners in the digital age. And Steve, your analysis of how these companies manage differently than the bottom 80% is putting your Forbes articles in the global spotlight and letting people really understand how different the management style of the top 20% of companies are. And what I want to talk to you about here, and then we can see what questions arise, is what's different even from the top 20% to what I will say is the top 1%, even actually smaller than that. And by that, I'm referring to Elon Musk's companies. Some people, it depends how you measure it. Tesla is the fastest growing company ever. There's never been a hardware manufacturing company that has grown faster in its number of produced units ever in the history of manufacturing. And depending on how you measure software licenses, there's never even been a software company that's grown as fast as Tesla. And then Elon Musk's management style did it again. There has never been an aerospace company ever that's grown as fast as SpaceX, launching the majority of mass into space this year. SpaceX has outrun every country in terms of mass into space, and they're just a company, not even a country. And Elon Musk is doing it again with Neuralink. Neuralink is the fastest growing medical electronics company in history. And maybe it's boring, but the Boring Company is the fastest growing tunneling company in history. And X.com gets a lot of negative press, but it is also the fastest growing social networking service ever. So something about this management style is interesting. And what I want to do together with you, Steve, now for the benefit of everyone attending is compare the management style of the top 20%, the winners in the digital age, with Elon Musk's management style, which is growing even faster than that.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be exciting. And I agree with you that what we saw in Tesla, what you described in your 6-hour blog, you would say that this is the next generation. This is what, in a sense, the beyond Agile, what it would look like, beyond what Apple and Microsoft and Amazon have done. And this takes it to a new level. And what particularly struck me was that he not only had the goal of the firm crystal clear, and he had been able to create a sort of permissionless workplace, which I hope you'll describe in more detail, but he'd also combined that with a social and noble goal to solve the planetary crisis, climate crisis, by producing 100 million electric cars or something in that order, so that basically we get the internal combustion engine off the road. And having those things aligned is something that none of those companies that I mentioned, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, have done. They are really at the level of the goal, creating value for customers, but they don't really have an intelligible mission, a noble goal for the whole organization. And what's exciting about Tesla is that he's been able to put those three things together. So I hope you'll be able to explain how he does that in ways that Microsoft and Amazon and Apple were not able to, have not yet been able to do. So I agree with you, he is at the forefront, and that's why your talk is so exciting and so important.
Your work helping us understand the management style of the top 20 is what I needed to try to then explain how what Elon is trying to do, and what I will even say has done, is working at the scale it's working. So we can contrast it to something.
Right.
So citing your article, and this one is how to unpack the culture of the top 20%, one of your most recent Forbes articles under leadership and strategy. Thank you so much, Steve Denning. You talk about the bottom 80%, the organization of the company are like machines, and the top 20%, the organizations are complex systems. Well, in Musk's culture, they're hybrid AI human systems. I don't mean that to sound science fiction. I'll try to make it really concrete. The work style in the Musk companies, I didn't even have a name for it. Simply, we would walk in and we would look at a list of metrics, real-time metrics that were visualized on monitors everywhere in the factories. They didn't at that time have any other buildings. It was all factories. So whether you were writing software or operating the Agile program like I was, we were still in the factories where the cars are physically built, and not in some beautiful glassed off area, like right there on the same concrete floor with the same dust and smoke.
Right.
And those monitors showing real-time metrics would give us the information. Everyone walking in at 5 a.m. and then again at 5 p.m. would give us the information on where we might be able to add value. And it was up to us to walk with our own mobility to where we thought we could add value. So we look at the metrics on these giant digital boards and then walk ourselves. There was no manager to tell us where to go. And we would attempt to add value. And the way we could walk up to an area and add value is because every group was using AI-assisted tools to quickly understand what was going on physically in the factory. We were encountering new parts and new processes we'd never seen before and that we weren't experts in. But by doing group work, very similar to MOB as defined by Woody Zuhl, and we were doing AI-assisted work, we were able to understand these practices that were completely new to basically everyone on planet Earth. So instead of viewing the company as a complex organism, it's in a fun way, like a video game, and it's a hybrid of a sports game where you work in teams and you pick the teams, and collaborating directly with AI. Now, this practice had no name. I've tried to name it so people can talk about it. I call it #MobAI, and that name has taken off. It's now being used and called exactly that in Toyota and Toyota's supply chain, and Mercedes-Benz has been trained in it, as you've seen on Mercedes-Benz LinkedIn. Your next point, Steve, was the bottom 80% treats organizations like hierarchies, and the top 20%, the winners, treats organizations as interactive networks. And I would say they're now virtualized networks. It doesn't matter if someone's working in Shanghai or in Giga Texas or Giga Nevada or in Brandenburg by Berlin or in the Netherlands. Every time we make a process improvement to the way the cars are manufactured, which means designing it, so designing that part and implementing it in production, the data from that process improvement is automatically shared with every other site. So we all worked locally, physically. There was no remote work because we're working physically on the cars. No matter what position we were in, we were expected to also help physically build cars. We understood the product, and so we improved the product. The software mechanism that is Tesla automatically shares that information with all sites. So we're an interactive, virtualized network. Your third point, Steve, was management is one dimension. Oh, please go ahead.
I just wondering whether you could just back up a little and describe how you came to be in Tesla. In other words, I understand it. I mean, you weren't a sort of a full-time employee over many years, that you actually applied. If you just go a little bit through the process of you applied, how that happened, how you were brought on board with the anti-handbook, and what was your experience as you moved into this very different world, just to sort of day by day, how it actually happened. You and I have talked about it, but I'm not sure the audience can quite visualize the things unless they sort of know that context of how you got involved in it and how long you were there and how it ended up, in a sense, for you when you moved on.
In 2006, I founded WikiSpeed and started developing what is now known as extreme manufacturing. and Peter Stevens, I think, has posted an update on extreme manufacturing, I believe just today. If it didn't publish today, it's probably coming very soon. But that wasn't famous yet in 2006. I was just starting it. I then went to work for Bill Gates. I was directly recruited to be a Scrum Master at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with Bill in 2008. And that's when I started making a name for myself in agility, using what a lot of us here are using in agility, but for not software projects. We were doing some software too, but we were also doing things like vaccine distributions. Then Wikispeed and extreme manufacturing and agile hardware started to become famous. And I became also a developer at Microsoft. And then I went to consult at Amazon when Jeff Bezos was CEO. And I spent a brief time collaborating with some of the architects at Apple. And then I applied at Tesla. And I got a phone call back from the person who had posted the job posting. In Tesla, that's how it works. Anyone can post a job posting. And what that means is when people apply, the applications go to you, the person who posted it. There are human resources departments. There's, in fact, 2 human resources departments that are there to assist you, but they're not there to get in your way. They edit your job posting and they'll apply sorting algorithms with you to the responses that come in. But if you posted the job posting, it's up to you to choose which applications you respond to, and then for you to call them back. So the person who posted the job called me on my phone, and they verified that I was who I said I was, that I was Joe Justice, and that I had created Team Wikispeed, and I had created the extreme manufacturing processes, and that I had run a composite shop, and I had run an aluminum shop, and I had taken cars through the road legalization process. And they said, "You're the best interview we've ever had." No one has worked on every aspect of automotive production and overseen the growth of a company to do that in every position that's ever applied here except you. When do you want to start? And so I did come in and I did accept the job. And the first 4 hours of accepting the job were reading a PDF on my own phone of the anti-handbook handbook and then doing safety training. And the anti-handbook handbook said, you can talk to Elon, no one will get in your way. You can talk to anyone. If anyone gets in your way, they will be fired. And it wasn't because I was special. Everyone got this information. The point was we could all go anywhere. And Agilists that have been to an open space conference with the law of mobility, where you are responsible to go where you can add the most value, that was the same feeling that we were all patterned to have in our first 4 hours of onboarding. We were told we can't make safety violations. That's totally unacceptable. We can't be unethical. That's, of course, totally unacceptable. If we're acting with good intent towards the company mission, everyone has our back. Everyone will support us. And we have essentially all the resources of the company and no approvals. We just do as fast as we absolutely can. Part of what made that responsible was the gamification, the justice boards, the AI tools, which is now called Tesla One, that coach us. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry.
I've just clarify that you could, the entire resources of Tesla were at your disposal. It's kind of an amazing statement. I just sort of push you on that. As I understand it, that if you're on the line and you see that you need 2 robots, which cost $1 million, you are able to order those robots, and you see from the TV screens why that is a good thing to do, or is it not a good thing, but you make the decision whether to do it and to decide to do that as opposed to doing something else. Could you just, that's a bit difficult for me who've worked in traditional organizations to imagine that I can just spend $1 million and it's just the way things are done. Could you just clarify a bit how that works?
Most companies have a hierarchy with some type of management group who tries to hold the money and hold authority. I didn't find that anywhere in Tesla. Instead, what I found were feedback loops to give everyone an equal idea on if they were acting efficiently towards the goal of the company or not. And I think part of why that was true is because the goal of the company wasn't to make money. So you didn't have a group of people at the top trying to make money. Instead, the goal of the company was to essentially solve climate change. I mean, one piece of it, right? The actual goal of Tesla is to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. And because of that, it's not like you can measure the efficiency. It is exactly like you can measure the efficiency. In fact, it's automatically measured of whatever you're doing in terms of time and money and factory volume measured in cubic meters towards accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. For example, one of the automatically measured metrics in an area where I spent a lot of time was how many seconds does it take to achieve a high quality paint finish on Tesla vehicles. And that's a real-time metric that's displayed. Like right now, the cars that are being processed right now, how many seconds does it take to paint each one until they have an optically perfect paint job? And that was measured automatically by individual wavelengths of light being measured off the paint finishes to detect blemishes. So it's totally automatic, and you have real-time data. Well, then that metric plugs into how much does it cost to make a car, and how much time does it take as well. And that plugs into how much do we have to sell the cars for? What cost are the cars? And that plugs into a parent metric, which is how many people on planet Earth can afford an electric car. And that plugs into a metric of all the cars that were built this year, how many of them were a sustainable energy technology, primarily electric. There's about 80 million cars made every year, and about 1 million of them at that time were electric. So it's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. So you have these cascading metrics trying to make the transition to sustainable energy faster, right? Well, then you can measure if you bought $1 million robot or two $1 million robots or €1 million, did it improve the time it takes to paint a car? What does that do to the cost to make a car? What does that do to the price at which Tesla can afford to sell a car? And then you know the cost of your choice versus the likely percent increase in electric cars bought this year. So, and that's all real time. You don't have to ask any manager for that. That's part of the digital self-management. Then you can compare that to any other choice you and your group could make, because we didn't work alone. We were in groups of people who self-organized around trying to improve these numbers.
But did you did you come with the idea of working on paint when you joined?
No. So hilariously, Wikispeed, some people here know, because some people in this audience have probably built Wikispeed cars with me. We built a number of them at Agile conferences, like in Potsdam, Germany, etc. We didn't paint our cars. We left them as raw carbon fiber and then put sponsors' decals on top. And that's because paint is really difficult and actually expensive, and I don't think many people appreciate it, because all cars are painted in the world around us, so you think it must be easy. It's actually incredibly difficult to get an awesome paint job. So I didn't do it. That was like the one car thing I didn't do. So on my application, I was like, yes, I've done everything except paint.
So how come you ended up doing the one thing you didn't know how to do?
So Elon Musk sleeps at the bottleneck. Whatever is believed to be the current limiting factor for that company. So for Tesla, for transitioning the world, accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, whatever is believed to be the bottleneck towards that in that company, that's where Elon puts Elon's sleeping bag.
Right.
And when I came into Tesla, Elon's sleeping bag was in paint. And not just paint, but in the North Paint building. And not just the North Paint building, but the area that painted the cars red. That was the bottleneck for Tesla at that time. And you could see it on all the digital self-management boards. Any meaningful improvement in North Paint, in all colors, but especially red, would have the most impact at the time on Tesla's ability to sell more cars, dropping the price down, reducing the time it takes to produce cars, etc. So like anyone, I looked at the most impactful area first and said, could I add value there? And I hadn't done paint, so I didn't know if I could add value there. So I started at the bottom, mobbing in group work on basic manufacturing tasks, and then adding definition of done and definition of ready, and working with the AIs to better train them to, a lot of the work is automated by AI robots, but they are trained, they're guided by the staff. So I did a lot of that. So that's why I started most of the time in paint. I did work or take notes on every single operation in Tesla, Fremont, California in 2020. And video and notes, which is what I've used to make my books and courses since then.
And when you made that choice, you could see paint was the number one, and red paint was the number one of number one. So you opted to do that. Did it have other choices on the screen? Sort of, well, you could also take training in some area, and that would be a choice that would be valued, and you could weigh it up, or did it say, man, go to the red paint and join that today?
So amazingly, Tesla has finally released a picture of these justice boards. And I vainly call them justice boards. They had no name when I was there. We just called them the boards. Yeah. But since then, I've been writing about them and trying to name them. I did call them justice boards. But I'll be very clear. In Tesla at that time in 2020, they were called the boards. Tesla did finally release pictures of the justice boards from when Netanyahu, I think, was touring Tesla Fremont, California, where I spent most of my time working. So you in the audience can look these up and see some pictures. They're taken kind of from the side, but you can sort of see. What they show is every KPI that any human has guessed is a bottlenecking factor that we could improve, that humans and AI together could improve now, a bottlenecking factor towards the transition to sustainable energy for all civilization. And then they have child metrics until there's a metric that people guess they could improve today. They think it's reasonable that with the resources of Elon Musk, a group of 3, 4, 5 people working with AI could improve that metric in less than 12 hours. So that's when the metric is small enough. Right. Like number of seconds in paint, in North Paint, for example. Well, you see all of these metrics on the wall, and you can propose new ones with an app on your phone. And then it's your job to go to one of them. So no, you don't get to just do training. You have to be working towards one of those metrics, or you're not an employee. That is your job. Right. Now, you can, on your off time, do training. And the training apps that are downloaded onto everyone's phones were awesome. They were really clear, really brief, really concise, and let me, and I think a lot of other people, learn really quickly what other people in Tesla had learned.
And did you ever have any questions? Well, maybe that metric isn't, it's valuing something too highly or not valuing something enough that you saw was the problem. Could you sort of question it, ask some authority to say, look, that metric doesn't quite look right, or that the machine sort of decides what you do?
So humans put a formula on each of these metrics. Those are up to humans. And like Reddit, you can upvote, downvote. So any human can propose a new way of measuring that KPI. And if it gets upvoted, it instantly and automatically replaces the incumbent, the previous metric. Now, AIs also would propose goals, but sometimes the goals were silly, and the AIs are not perfect, or at least they weren't perfect in 2020. So humans would still upvote and downvote.
And did you experience that yourself, the proposing a different metric and getting an answer, and how quickly did the answer come, or did it took a while, or and who does the voting, the upvoting and the downvoting? Is that the teams or the managers or both, or how does it go?
I couldn't find managers, Steve. I couldn't find them. There were people called managers, but who they were rotated, usually more than once a day. I don't think they got paid any more than anyone else, and I don't think they had any more authority than anyone else. I think what they did is they signed up to volunteer to file the required state government forms saying that there was a manager on staff, because California state government, where I was in the state of California most of the time, required that. So people signed up to do the required legal work, but as far as I could tell, who it was rotated multiple times a day, and they didn't have any additional responsibility. So it truly, in effect, my experience of it was completely managerless. So anyone through the apps on their phones could upvote, downvote, or propose new measuring criteria, which, yes, I did as well. And it's in real time. And in my experience, most of the time those actions would, I don't want to say percolate, they would show up on all the monitors around in less than 45 minutes.
Right. But there must have been some people deciding about the algorithms, deciding which to put up and which kind of technology to use, but you didn't see those people, or they were so busy on the floor helping out with the mob that you couldn't distinguish the managers from anyone else. Is that?
I don't think so.
No.
So if we look at it like playing an online game, I'm sure if the online game economy got so broken, the administrators would come in. I'm sure, and the administrators in this case are Elon Musk, and I think just Elon. Right? It's a very flat company, but I never experienced that. Truly, the rules of the game, the digital self-management, seemed good enough that the system balanced itself without a leadership class, as far as I could find anywhere.
So we have about 10 minutes left. Maybe I could ask you, are there any critical points we haven't got to? I know I've interrupted you quite a lot. And I'd like to give one or 2 minutes to the group to ask a question about this amazing experience that you've had. But why don't you, what haven't you been able to cover so far?
Steve, I think you and I together here have a real chance because of your understanding of leadership in the top 20%. And the experiences I've had working for Elon Musk compared to the experiences I've had working for Bezos and Gates. Right. And it's Musk, all of the Musk companies have a 1,000-year goal. And I think that's incredibly important for this management style to work. None of them have a goal that is to maximize shareholder return. And interestingly, none of them have a goal that's to maximize user value. Instead, they all have a goal that is intending to improve humanity, like the transition from hunter-gathering to the agrarian era, that type of step change of society. Neuralink's goal is to have fast communication, detailed, meaningful communication between humans and computers. And that's viewed as a step change in what it means to be human. That's the dream of Neuralink, basically to have a high bandwidth conversation with an AI directly in your brain without having to type at the speed of thought. And now that ChatGPT is out, maybe some people understand the value of that a little better than they did a year or 2 years ago. SpaceX goal is to spread the light of consciousness out among the stars. Basically make it so humans and all life could live on many other planets sustainably without having to have supplies come from Earth. So we sustainably live out in space. That's again a step change, even bigger than the transition from hunting gathering to agrarian farming, even bigger than that, right? Because these goals are so interesting, they attract people that are purpose motivated, and it helps keep the focus at work purpose motivated. And that, I think, is completely different than the management style of Apple or Netflix or Microsoft or Amazon. And I think it unlocks a different type of engineering. Then another aspect is that all work, as far as I could find, was group work, and all work, as far as I could find, was assisted by in-house AI. Some people here use Google Bard or Microsoft Bing AI or ChatGPT every day. Well, imagine if that AI knew your work context, and it knew how much money was being spent in which area, and it knew who works well with who and who doesn't work well with who. It could make much more useful recommendations, right? Well, that's now what Tesla calls Tesla One. It's the digital backbone of the company, and I've never seen AI that capable, that made such meaningful suggestions. And because you have this very high quality recommendation coming from Tesla One, you're able to work with these groups incredibly quickly towards the company's mission. And that's something I've not seen in any of the other top 20% as well. Those are points I wanted to add. Thank you so much, Steve.
And as I understand it, a basic principle is that you work in groups. You don't work individually. You assume that it's this exchange of expertise, different people, different perspectives is crucial to reach this extreme innovation. Is that correct?
That was exactly my understanding. I did not see anybody working alone, including myself.
Because there are some people who suggest, well, it would reduce, it would increase efficiency. Let's say if people work at home and they just work on their thing and they make their contribution to other individuals. That would be the antithesis of the philosophy of Tesla.
There's real-time data, and everyone can see it. It's not like managers hire analyst teams that make reports and then those leaders give presentations on it, which is what I've seen in almost every other company. Instead, you have this real-time dashboard, and everyone has the same dashboard, and it's all automatic. There's not any analyst team recording data. It's all coming from sensors and cameras in the factories and on the cars. There's no human between. Because of that, you can see how much faster it is towards the company goal to work in AI-assisted groups physically in the factory. So there's simply no other question.
Exactly. We have 5 minutes left. Could I see what questions there are from the audience? Anyone? Yes. You get a microphone.
Do I go first?
Yes.
Can you hear me? To be honest, I'm impressed with what I heard from you just now. It seems like a perfect harmonic world. Like at the same time, this is where I'm going to. Everybody contributes and put himself or herself into the common goal. Did I get it right, or are there any cases where there are frictions, there is some tensions, and if any, who is coming in to resolve, since you described a very flat hierarchy and where only Elon is the administrator, this is what you said. So thank you for the talk, by the way. It was top notch, at least. This is what I believe. Thank you.
I'm really grateful you even managed to put a compliment in your question. That's wow, you just made my day. Thank you so much. And again, Steve, thank you so much for the privilege of collaborating with you right now. And I'll try to get to the question. I've never had as much fun at work, and I've never seen a workplace that was as productive or as efficient. And I've worked in almost every automotive company and many of the world's aerospace companies, including military defense suppliers. I've just not seen faster, more efficient development ever, anywhere. And I've never had more fun doing it. But it is also really tiring. People talk about burning out, and it's a lot better than it was. It's still intense. Now it's up to you. You're self-managing. No one yelled at me and said, you need to work faster or harder. It's more that you can see how fast you're going, and it feels good to improve what you hope is towards the company mission, because most of the people who are there, maybe everyone, believes in the mission of the company. I did. I believe in accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. So when I'm there, when I was there, and the work that I'm part of doing is improving the KPIs that look like it's doing the right thing, it's really exciting. It's super exciting. Well, that uses energy, right?
Right.
And I think if you're an employee for Elon Musk, you get days off, you get time off. You actually have 4 days off a week. Three days off one week, 4 days off the next week. So you actually get more time off than most other types of work. But you really need to use that time recovering, resting. I mean, playing with your kids, sure, but not like going for an endurance hike. And I think that's the downside, actually. I don't think this type of work is available yet to people who aren't in peak health. And that actually brings me to my current goal. I want to grow a company that lets you work in the style I learned working for Elon Musk, that uses mob AI, that uses justice boards, that uses no estimates, that uses no budgets. But you could work 45 minutes a day. You could work less intensely, hopefully still towards a meaningful goal, right? Kids could work if they wanted to. I mean, work like a project-based learning. People who were retired could participate if they wanted to. So that's my current dream, is to make a company for as many people as want jobs, 9 billion people if they want the jobs, hopefully doing something meaningful and working in that work style, but accommodating people even if they have less energy. So if there's a downside, I'd say I think a very high level of fitness is required to work for Elon. So my passion project is taking this work style and making it available to people who don't want to or cannot work as intensely.
Right. Yeah, very good answer. We have another question here.
Hi, I have a question. Is the way Tesla operates described somewhere? Would you recommend any publication or book to get more information?
So Elon has published some engineering principles, which I think are great. But no, the Tesla work style has not been written anywhere. There's excerpts, there's anecdotes, there's stories. So I've made an online class, which is what I do now for funding. It's called #JoeDX. And that's actually because it's named Joe for my name, because it's limited by what I understood working there. I want to call it the Musk model. I really want to call it the Musk model, but I don't think I understood everything that was going on there. I hope one day Elon does publish the entirety of the Musk model. For now, it's the piece I was able to understand. It's an online seminar called #JoeDX. Now, I've published in blogs and on my YouTube channel my experience and what I think I understand of it. But I've never seen as complete an analysis anywhere else yet. I hope it gets published so you have more resources than just me.
Right. Well, I have to say that your 6-hour blog on Tesla is the most amazing blog that I've ever read. It's most detailed, it's the most accurate, it's most convincing, and if you really want to understand that, spend the 6 hours, because almost every question you could imagine is covered in that. And this, you're making a sort of huge contribution to the discipline of management by talking about something that I don't think anyone else could deliver that. I'm not even sure that Elon could write that book because he's so involved in it and so busy making decisions and planning his next trip to the next galaxy or whatever he's up to next, that he simply wouldn't be able to write that book. And as I mentioned, Walter Isaacson and those kinds of people never even get to first base. They don't go into the factory. They're talking about a higher level and totally miss what you've uncovered, which is just a radically different way of doing it. And so my congratulations to you on behalf of the group. This has been just an amazing, amazing presentation. And so I'd like to ask the group to express their appreciation to Joe for sharing his time today from Japan and telling us about this absolutely amazing experience that he's had. So thank you very much.